Hi there, this is Billie Tarascio with the Modern Divorce Podcast, joined today by a semi-famous Shawn Bradford. She is a yoga instructor, a mindfulness instructor, and you probably know her from her TEDx Talk, Thank You Divorce. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Billie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, you're a perfect guest. My team found you, reached out. So happy that you would be willing to come on the show. Um, we at Modern Law love yoga. We do yoga as a law firm.
Yay.
At least once a week, we bring in an instructor and do yoga. I think it's so valuable. Like just the mind-body connection, the breath, the flexibility. Like I think on every level, it is probably more valuable, like biggest bang for your buck.
Absolutely. And that's really what started me on this whole self-awareness path, and getting to know myself better was through the path of yoga.
Yeah,
so I agree.
mean, there's no better way to spend an hour feeding your mind, body, and soul. You know, there's no better way. So if you have not done yoga, if you have not taken the time to check in with your mind and body and feed everything all at once, like as a very efficient mom of 4 and entrepreneur with 3 businesses, I'm telling you, this is worth every single second.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you, Billie.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about your TED Talk, Thank You Divorce, and relationship patterns and what you learned from your own divorce and your talk and how it resonated with people. So let's start with the substance. Can you give us a synopsis of your talk, Thank You Divorce?
Absolutely. I realized that I had these relationship patterns that just kept repeating. It's like put any man in front of me, and I would repeat the same patterns if I was in relationship with them. And through the path of yoga, doing all this self-awareness, I started realizing like, oh, I got divorced. I really thought getting divorced, every single one of my problems would be solved because everything was his fault. And, after I was divorced, I started to explore relationships, and I had 3 pretty serious relationships in a row. And anytime I didn't have my 3 kiddos when they were with their dad, I was devoting every bit of my free time to building these relationships. And I started to realize the same feelings, the same thoughts, the same lack of what I perceived of as a lack of love, a lack of attention, a lack of devotion kept presenting itself. And through that, I finally turned the mirror around and I thought, wait a second, the only common denominator here is me. So what am I contributing to keep different man, same relationships, and what am I doing? So I really kind of just paused for a minute on the relationships, did a deeper self-work because this is a lifelong journey in my experience. And then after I did a lot of this work, my ex-husband and I found our way back together for kind of a second try at the relationship. And we had a very different relationship. There was a lot more self-awareness, a lot of ahas. We were together for about maybe a year and a half, and it didn't work out that second time, but more so because we found we just weren't compatible. And it was interesting. It was a very softer, calmer relationship than charged before by so many patterns. So it was an interesting journey.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Now, can you share in detail what these patterns might look like and how they might manifest? Because people might be listening to you thinking, I don't think that's true for me.
Yeah. So let me kind of dive deep here. And I got divorced, gosh, was it 7 years ago by now? So I really have to get back in that frame. So a few things. What I would do in relationships is I would devote so much of myself to them that I would kind of lose myself. So if they weren't happy, I would go, well, what do I need to do to make them happy, right? So in essence, it sounds like it's this very loving, kind thing to be doing everything for them, but it's actually really disempowering to them because I'm trying to control their feelings through what I'm doing. So let me give like a really silly example, but it sticks in my mind. When I was married, and again, this is just from my perspective, right? I can't speak for anybody else. But at the time, I don't think my then husband, loved his job. And so he would come home kind of grumpy each day. Well, I took it personal, right? Thinking it was all about me. And I just went down this path of what can I do to make him happy? And I worked from home full time. I had the 3 kids home with me. And I would kind of pause our day right before he'd get home. And I'd do this like mass cleaning to make sure everything was in order, get the kids completely, situated, have dinner ready, and thinking, okay, this is what it's going to be it when he's happy. So then when he would come home and still not be happy, I would be resentful, right? Sure. I would be angry with him because I'm doing everything to make you happy. Well, then we divorce, right? And I start in these new relationships. And a new relationship might be, well, I'm cooking for you. And again, I've always worked. I've always had, my own life, but then I've always worked full time, had these other projects, been a very devoted mother. But when I have any ounce of free time, instead of really working on like that personal development or what does Shawn want to do even, it's like, what do they want to do? What can I do for them to go that extra mile? So again, I might go, okay, well, this person really loves food. And even though I'm not really a cook, can I make this great home cooked meal for them to really show how much they're loved? And if they're not fully reciprocating or fully just swooning because I did this, then that resentment builds. Yeah. And it builds to, you're not loving me enough. I'm doing all these things for you, right? I am doing all these things, all these wonderful things for, I'm this amazing girlfriend, right? I'm cooking for you. We're going out and having fun. We're hanging out with your friends, with my friends. And when I'm free, I'm fully devoted to you, but I'm not feeling that devotion back. Yeah. And that just kept repeating itself, right? I'm like, well, there's not enough love here. So let me go on to the next relationship. Yeah. Let me be fully devoted to you and fully in this. But there's still not enough love. I'm still not feeling like I'm loved enough from you. So let me go on to the next relationship, right? Where I finally figured out, well, why don't I devote my time to myself? Why don't I make those home cooked meals for me, but something I want to make? Why don't I devote time to creative projects, to developing female friends and just things that I wanted to do versus always thinking, what did they want to do? What's going to make them happy? And just putting so much energy and attention on them. That was, I think, the big thing. I was putting all my energy and attention onto them because it's easier. There's no vulnerability in doing that. I don't have to look and say, what do I need to fix within me? What do I need to focus on? I get to look at them and say, well, I can help you fix this. Let's work out together because you need to do that. Or let's meditate together because you need to do that. Right. Or let's help you start this project because you need to do that. Instead of just going, what do you need? And just focusing on that and trusting from a place of just feeling complete within myself, then I can match up with somebody. Is that making sense?
It does. It does. But I mean, it also sounds like you're somebody who's like, love language wise, you're the acts of service. You want to pour into someone, and why shouldn't you expect somebody to pour into you? Like, how do you balance your desire to pour into someone while also taking care of yourself? Who's the right match for you?
And I think that's where, to go back for a second, that's where I had such a lack because I wanted to pour into somebody else so much that I didn't pour into me at all. Like there was nothing pouring into me. There was no awareness of even like, what does Shawn like to do in her free time? It really stemmed down to, I couldn't spend any time by myself. There's almost this fear of, I don't want to spend time by myself. I don't want to be by myself. I don't want that quiet, that solitude, that I equated that with loneliness. Instead of now I can go, I have a whole weekend to myself. What does Shawn want to do? And what fills me up? And I cannot wait to spend some quiet time to myself or just time deciding, what do I actually want to do? Does it want to be filled with social events?
Right.
Because I'm feeling social? Or am I just feeling like I need some time to go inward? And now at this point, because I've done so much work, I'm okay having that that quiet time to myself, but I wasn't before. And I think all that pouring into somebody else stemmed from a deep fear of not wanting to spend any time by myself.
This is a big deal. And people who get out of, who go from being married for years, married with kids, where you literally have zero free time at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing work, then you need to be planning, meals and cleaning up and taking your kids where they need to go. And there's zero quiet time, which is why yoga is so good. But putting yoga aside, like there's so little time that is ever not filled. There's so little time that is alone or spent checking in with yourself because you have so much to do, that many, mostly women, but also men, getting out of relationships, being alone for the first time in their adult life, sometimes feel exactly that way, terrified of what to do with free time.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because, on a surface level, from a society level, I look like this, always have looked like this very together woman, has a very well-established career. I'm taking great care of my kids. We live in a nice house. So it's like from the surface level, it looks like, oh, well, she's got everything together. But underneath, again, going back, because I think it's so important to stay on this subject for a moment, there was this deep insecurity of, well, when my kids go with their dad and I'm not coupled up in a relationship, like, who am I? Yeah. And it was a lot of fear, because then I wasn't, the woman that had it all together. There was a lot of things underneath that weren't together at all. And so shattering that perception for myself was really all that mattered, to go, there's a lot of insecurity inside here. There's a lot of fear of being by myself. And it had nothing to do with, financial support or even emotional support. I just was so used to having somebody by my side. I didn't know what it even felt like not to. And it was terrifying at first just to say, you know what, we're going to stay home tonight. This doesn't make you not a lovable person if you have no plans on a Friday or Saturday night. I mean, it sounds almost embarrassing to say that, but it's like, I went through that where I was like, oh, I'm nobody if I don't have anybody to spend time with on a Saturday night date night, until it's like, well, spend time with yourself. Yeah. Go for a walk, practice some yoga on your own, journal, read, get to even know what you like, maybe try some new hobbies, explore some new friendships. And that was the number one thing that I had to work through, was sitting with myself by myself and going out and doing things independently, even though I had this facade of being, this independent, successful woman. I'm like, not really, because I cannot spend any time by myself. So that, I think, was my journey, and still is my journey, of being fine with my own company and enjoying my own company and accepting all of me. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where my mind went.
Well, I think that what I can tell you is that your experience is so common, and I think many people are simply more comfortable in relationship, and many humans are drawn to being in relationship and would prefer, limited alone time. Like, alone time's fine as long as it's not too much. And it's interesting to figure out what's a healthy balance, and how do you make sure you're feeding your extroverted side that needs social interaction, but also taking the time to check in and make sure your needs are met. Like, if you find yourself in relationships all the time, just taking care of everybody else and not knowing even what to ask for, you probably can't find yourself in a healthy relationship.
Exactly. And through all this self-exploration, what I think is really kind of like a worldwide phenomenon, but maybe more, I should say, like an American phenomenon, is these codependent relationships.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of work on that, because when I started going down that path of exploring, why do I always need to be coupled up, I realized there was a lot of codependent energy and I kind of take on the role of caretaker. And there can definitely be positive sides to that, right? That's a beautiful thing to caretake. But when it comes at expense of taking care of yourself and filling up yourself first, a lot of, teachings that I do will say, like, I love the analogy of like you give from your overflow. So you fill yourself up first with just love, with worth, with knowing you're enough, with feeling good. And again, I'm talking about, this has been years and years of my learning. And then you give to others from that overflow after you filled up. But codependent is like, let me match up with you and let's meet each other's needs only, because we can't meet our own needs. And for me, being a caretaker is very disempowering to somebody else, because I'll step in and go, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. I'll do it. Never giving that other person a chance to do it. And then those of us that take on that caretaker kind of codependent role, then we feel depleted, we feel resentful, and we keep wondering why this repeats. For me, it's a very deep pattern. And now when I get the energetic chemistry with the man, I can distinguish enough, like, oh, that's my codependent energy trying to do what's familiar, right? Ooh. And instead, one of the best advice I read from Pia Melody, she does a lot of work on codependency, is couple up where you don't feel that because we want to couple up with that chemistry, right? But a lot of time, if we're unconscious about it, that chemistry is coming from a place of what feels familiar, from kind of what we were raised in. And again, for me, that's that codependent, that chemistry is there because it's so familiar, it's exciting, it's chaotic. So for me, when I don't have that crazy, like, I want to glom onto you, that's going to be a healthier relationship for me.
We've been talking about this a lot. So we've been talking about this a lot. Like, what is anxiety? What is unhealthy butterflies that you should run from? You know, the love bombing, the sort of narcissistic codependent relationship that you really want to get away from, but that feels just so good. It's like freaking crack or heroin. Like, how do you know what's crack or heroin? Not good, you know, red flag relationships versus the more stable, healthy, perhaps less, exhilarating, but more like calm, more familiar, more comforting. Tell me what you think.
Yes. And again, I've done a lot of like self-study on this from when I've dated. So for example, I'm thinking of two particular men that I just like very casually dated at the same time, right? And it was an interesting comparison because one of them was like, I wanted to glom onto you. It felt so crazy and amazing and kind of that very addictive relationship. And while that felt like the right path because that chemistry was so wild, when I would sit with it and journal about it and kind of almost talk to myself about it, because I'm not trying to throw this all throughout the years, I've developed really strong friendships. So I have a couple of strong girlfriends that, I'm not going to bomb them with it, but I'll definitely talk it out. So between talking it out with friends, journaling, I figured, okay, this guy where I've got this crazy strong chemistry pool with, I don't feel good here. I'm feeling this lack, like I'm not enough. And I feel like I'm seeking approval. I feel like I'm seeking the love. And it feels like I'm clawing for the love, but it also feels exciting. So to me, that's a no. We're going to cut that off and not go down that path because that's not taking care of myself. That makes me feel depleted. It makes me feel like I'm lacking something. And nothing to do with this guy, right? He's not consciously doing any of this, but it's what it's pulling up for me with this energy. And so to me, when I'm trying to relate to somebody from a place of feeling lack, insecure, not enough, that's a cut. That's not healthy. Again, nothing to do with the dude, not healthy for me and the way I'm relating. So then I look at this other guy, right? This other guy. When I think about him, I'm not super worried. There's an attraction, not super worried when I'm going to hear from him, right? When I'm with him, talking to him, when I'm not with him, there's more of a sense of I'm enough. There's a sense of upliftedness. There's not this crazy excitement, but there is I'm looking forward to seeing you. So it's not like I don't want to see you. There's no attraction. I'm not going to, we don't need to be in those relationships.
Right.
There's an attraction, but I'm not feeling any sort of crazy chemistry. I'm feeling very calm about it'll be nice to see you again, but it doesn't matter when it is at this point in a new dating. And so it's a calmer, non-obsessive, and it lifts me up, where the other one brings out my insecurities. And I want to work through those insecurities myself. I don't want to work through them with a love relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my answer.
I love it. I think that what you said is so important. It also illustrates why we can find ourselves in these patterned relationships. If you think about it like a addictive, dopamine inducing full body rush of chemicals, you're that feels good. Feels really
Mm-hmm.
bad and it feels really good. We have had
Mm-hmm.
those relationships where it's like, why isn't he calling me? Why isn't he calling me? That feels really, really bad. But then he does, and you go out and you have this amazing time and it feels really, really, really good. And you're like on this roller coaster. And of course, we seek out the highs, and then
Yes.
we can find ourselves in that pattern of relationship that is so destructive and that can be abusive.
And I love that you said that word seek again, because that's what kept coming up for me, like the seeking the love. And we don't need to seek any love. Like when I remind myself, I am already love, like we're all love, and I don't need to seek it. And so the moment I find, I want to focus on that word because I think it's so important. The moment we find we're trying to seek something, that's not the right path to go down. We want to already feel the love and then meet somebody there.
Right.
Yeah. So I love that you said that.
Accept it,
Mm-hmm.
receive, accept, as opposed to like, grab and, and try to catch out of thin air, or be good enough. Like, so if you're doing acts of service because you want to be good enough, or you want to be impressive, or you want to, that's not receiving, right? That's like seeking and clawing.
And for me, I realized, these acts of service are actually really selfish because I'm doing them to get something in return. I'm doing it to get their love and their approval. So really, if you take that route down, it's really manipulative. Like that's where I take my caretaker archetype and I'm really manipulative. I'll cook you this beautiful homemade, vegan meal because you're a vegan. I like vegan too, but regardless, I'll do that for you, but because I want you to approve of me. I want your love. So I have this underlining intention instead of just saying, I'm doing this for you because I love you and I expect nothing in return. So if I turn that on, like my girlfriends, right? When I do these acts of services for, say, my girlfriends, my children, things where there's not those chaotic dynamics, I love that you said that. It is simply acts of service with no expectations. And the true intention behind it is I love you and I'm showing you I love you. I don't need anything in return. But of course, we're friends because there's always a give and take, but there's no expectations of that. And that's what I've learned to pull into romantic relationships is one, a much slower route to intimacy. I've always wanted to jump that. Always. And that was also my problem. Like I want to create intimacy, in the first month we're together, I want it to seem like we've been together for a year because I'm so wanting that intimacy. And it takes time to develop. It takes time. And I think I totally went off on another path there, but that's what popped in my mind to say that.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that because we do want intimacy. Like we as humans want intimate relationships. We don't want shallow relationships. We want like worthy, intimate, meaningful relationships. And I think what you're saying is it starts with having like a worthy, meaningful, intimate relationship with yourself where you know yourself, you recognize what you need, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know what pitfalls you might fall under, you know what brings out the best in you. And then you can go work on the intimate relationships with others.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I've learned like it just can't be rushed because we have to build up that trust. If we think to, again, our healthy female relationships, like those relationships developed over time. There was trust that built up before we shared too much.
Yeah.
And my habit with men is to, 3 weeks into the relationship, I've been known, not since I've had children, but before I got married, it's like, we're living together because, I was trying to immediately create this false sense of intimacy where we're doing everything together. because it felt intimate, but that's not intimacy. And then same thing after I had kids, of course, we're not living together, but I definitely rushed the physical part of the relationship. And then I confused the sexual part of the relationship with intimacy. And that's also not the case. That to me, like whenever you decide to engage in the physical part, I've got no framing or rules of that. It's just simply for me not mistaking the physical sexual relationship with actual intimacy. And for me, the best sexual relationship is when there's long-term intimacy built up.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Okay, this has been absolutely fantastic. I want to break it down. Let's say I am a woman, I'm listening to this, and this is really resonating with me, and I understand that I am this person. I'm recently divorced. I've been through a slew of sort of failed false start relationships. I'm just looking for the next one. How do I even start? Where do I start?
That is such a good question. And what I love is I was going through an old folder just last night trying to find something unrelated. And I came across something that started this whole journey. So I had taken a life coaching course. And what was so amazing about it was we had to put ourselves through the coaching. And that's where a lot of my awareness grew from as well. So in this coaching exercise, what it made us do, and I'll share with anyone listening, so it's so helpful for me, is I wrote down 3 pivotal relationships that I have had that have been charged. So it's, father, for example, ex-husband, new lover. And I started just writing down all the things about those relationships that made me feel good, all the things that didn't, and anything I wanted to write down about each relationship. So kind of just words and phrases. And then after I'd written down, so I've got relationship 1, and it could be 3 lovers, right? It doesn't matter who it is, but they're 3 charged relationships because we can have these patterns in friendships too. Mm-hmm. So 3 charged relationships. And then you look at the patterns across those relationships because the patterns then are patterns that were contributing. So for me, it just got to be, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel really, just to put normal terms on, I felt crappy in each relationship. I didn't feel good about myself. Okay. And in each one, I was like, I'm like clawing for their validation. I'm clawing for their approval. And for a while, I had to sit with that. Well, why do I want their approval? Mm-hmm. And it's easy just for me to say the words of, well, then I had to turn that around because approval for me was a big part. Like I'm striving for their approval and their love. I'm over here doing jumping jacks and cartwheels saying, love me, notice me, was these patterns. And turning it around and just saying, how can I approve of myself and how can I love myself, was where I started the work. So that is my advice for where to start. Write down 3 charged. And when I mean charged, just relationships that just are strong for you, that make you feel a little chaotic, a little bit like, what is going on? Or 3 failed relationships. There you go. And start to just write 3 failed relationships. And you just start to write down whatever you associate with each one. And then look for the theme across the 3. Whatever the theme is the work to start on. And even then go to the internet. Whatever that is, I feel rejection in each one of these relationships. How do I work through rejection? And of course, I do have to fall back because it's been so pivotal for me. I fell back of meditation daily, and a lot of times guided because I didn't want to sit with my own thoughts. And there's meditations for everything. Meditation to release the feeling of rejection. However, I want to say something else. These aren't bad things about us. So whatever comes up for you, what has come up for me, even recently, I was like, I need to get rid of that desire to still pair with this person that's making me feel like I have to claw for his love. No, that's just a part of me. And I'm going to accept that part of me. It's probably always going to be there, but aware enough of it to go, I feel this pull over here, but I'm going to make this other choice. So that's my other thing that I'd like to tell everybody. Whatever comes up for you, just accept it. It's part of you. It's okay. We all have these things. I have this crazy need to like claw for your love. But then I turn it back around and say, how can I address that within myself? But I'm also accepting that it might always be there, and that's okay. It's a part of me. And that's the other thing I'd say, just accept whatever comes up, because we all have stuff. We're a polarity of emotions, a polarity of energies.
And what you're saying is super important, because right now in society, there is a massive tendency to label a relationship toxic. The relationship is toxic, or the ex is toxic, and you therefore have to cut them out. But many, 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 many times in my world, you have children with this person. And what that means is that you are making your co-parenting relationship and your relationship between your children and their mom or dad much worse. And this idea that you have to then kill the toxic relationship and get rid of the toxic person is really hurting you and your kids. So can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I'm really proud of my ex and I was, we co-parent very well. And we, at the end of the day, we love these children. I mean, I know everybody loves their children. We love these children so much that we made together, and we recognize and realize that they are half me and half him. I mean, and not even really, they're their own people,
Right.
but they're ours together. And however we communicate, however we work with each other, because we can get still charged when we're together, and we can now back away and go like, okay, great to talk to you for 5 minutes. We're getting charged. Let's just go back to because we charge each other. We trigger each other a lot still. And because there's so much there, it's
right.
However, we both have this underlining intention that the kids are, of course, the most important, and we can both step back. And even in the beginning, if that was, I'm speaking from my own perspective, he might say the opposite of just me stepping back and remembering that I share children with this person, and we don't cut these people out of our life. We're always going to be in each other's life. And it goes back to what I'm already saying. Any patterns I see between the two of us, I just look at myself. It has nothing to do with him. It's just showing me what I need to work on. And any triggers are a lesson to me of what I need to work on. Nothing. Take the guy out of the picture. Even going back to the co-parenting, right? And I don't mean cut them out. I just mean for my work, take them out of the picture. I can't begin to assume your path. I just have to look back at myself and say, this is what I'm learning. This is what I need to work on. And we co-parent really, really well. Our communication is strictly about the kids, and we're real friendly about it. And we're real, with me stepping back as caretaker, it's allowed him to really step up and even take more of an active role. It's really actually beautiful, so as I've worked to heal like my codependent caretaker roles and energies that I was directing at him, it has, and again, I'm speaking now just from my perspective, what I've seen, like it's allowed him to step more into himself, because I'm not trying to control everything. Yeah. I've stopped. I learned a long time ago, when they're with him, I don't get to tell him what he's doing with the kids on the weekend, which I was guilty of that. I'd be like, okay, here are the kids and they have this. No, it's his weekend. Why am I even trying to control that? And it sounds silly saying it, but up until recently, I'd organize all their play dates, everything they were doing, and then tell him, where now it's like, no, he can handle all that. I don't need to get involved in anything when it's his weekend with them. And that, again, I'm going off subject again, but that's also been empowering for both of us, because now I get time to actually relax and rejuvenate on my weekends off, and he can handle whatever's going on with the kids. He's more than capable. That's how I answer your question. Yeah, we still, they are, well, I'll just wrap that up with, these kids are part him, part me. and our communication is about them. And anytime we're battling, which we don't, because when we used to, that's just making everything more difficult on the kids. And our kids have a really, we have a really healthy like exchange back and forth. There's not really much anymore of this transition time because it's pretty fluid. We have each other's backs. There's no, well, I'll ask dad or I'll ask mom. Like for those big decisions, we have each other's backs, which I think, not I think, it's incredibly important. We support each other on the parenting decisions.
Well, Shawn, this has been fantastic. Really, 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 really. I watched your TED Talk. I loved it, but um, this has been fantastic. I appreciate all of your insights. I think it's going to resonate with each and every one of our listeners. And I will be linking to your website. And just before we end, tell people what services you offer.
Yeah, so my website, and I know you'll link, is breatheandwork.com. So BREATHE and work.com. I offer yoga and meditation. I specifically offer a lot of trainings for yoga teachers for continuing education. I teach yoga and meditation in businesses, which is very off subject for what we're talking about. And I do have a coaching certificate, and I have coached people before as they have questions about their own relationship patterns. I'm open to it, but it's also not something I do on the consistent basis.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Billie. Bye-bye.
Bye.